Hey everyone, Ara, thank you so much for joining today's class. Today is all about Halloween. We are going to be using a few of the new Satin Ice products, and we're going to make a cool drip cake with ghosts all around it. We can go to the overhead camera and I'll start going over some supplies that we're going to be using today. To start, I do have a cake turntable. This is going to help make it really easy to spin the cake and frost it smoothly. If you don't have this, that's okay. But this makes it a lot easier. On top of my turntable, I have a cake board. So this is what we're going to be putting our cake layers on. I have a microwave. You can't really see it, but it's right here. This is going to be heating up the cake drip as we use it. And then I also have a tray with some parchment paper. These are some of the ghosts we're going to be making. I just pre-made some so that I knew some of them would be dry to put them onto the cake for today's class. I have a pair of scissors and I have some piping bags. I always love using the disposable ones because it just makes for easier cleanup. I have some spatulas for scraping the icing out of the pails. Some offset spatulas or angled spatulas. This is going to help smooth out the cake as well as an icing smoother. I have some wet paper towels and dry paper towels just because I don't have access to a sink right next to me. So that's going to help keep my hands clean and my space clean. We are going to be working with the new ready-to-use colored buttercreams that we just launched. You'll see those on the end cap in Michael's stores. There's a variety of different really vibrant colors. Today, we're going to be using black and purple. So we're going to be making that striped buttercream effect on the outside of the cake with these colors. And then we are going to be making a black drip. And then we'll be using the drip to make the ghosts as well. So that's where the white cake drip will come in. And then we'll use the black for the eyes and the mouth. And then I also have a star piping tip. So that's going to be for the dollops on top of the cake. And then I also have cake layers to the side here. I'm working with vanilla and these are about 7-inch and I have 3 layers. If you only have 2 layers, you'll still get a really cute cake. So no worries there. I do want to mention I do have Joyce with me in the room. So she's going to let me know if you guys have any questions in the chat box and hopefully I can answer them. And so we can get started. So first, let's just talk about the buttercream a little bit. So these are pre-colored and getting vibrant colors in buttercream can be a huge pain. So we came out with pre-colored buttercream with black being one of the hardest colors to achieve. This is ready to go. A nice, rich, deep black. And it's smooth enough for spreading on a cake, but it's also firm enough to hold a pipe. And that's amazing in a buttercream because a lot of the store-bought buttercreams you can spread them, but it won't hold a pipe. And it has a delicious vanilla flavor. So that's always good. So we are going to start with the buttercreams. I'm going to actually alternate between the colors when I stack the cake because I think it will give a cool effect when you cut it. So I'm going to alternate in the layers with the black and the purple. I also want to mention if depending on where your climate is, the buttercream might seem firm to you in the pail. If that's the case, you can literally put it in the microwave in the container for 10 seconds. That's what I did as the temperatures are getting cooler. But if you are in a warmer climate, you will find that you probably don't even have to do that. You can also mix in extra liquid or put it into a mixer to really fluff it up and get it more of a fluffier consistency. Okay, so now we're going to start assembling the cake. And I first like to take some of my buttercream and I just take my angled spatula and I just do a little smear in the center. And this is just going to make sure that my cake, it's going to kind of like act like glue so that the cake doesn't move around onto the board as I'm scraping the icing along the sides. So I do that first. And we will put a layer down. A little hack for everyone, if you don't feel like baking your cake layers, a lot of the times you can go to your local food store and ask for cake layers. That's what I did here. I have 3 vanilla 7-inch cake layers. You could use 8-inch. You could use whatever size cake layers you want. And I'm working with 3 today, but if you only have 2, that's fine as well. So I have this secured to the cake board, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of the black on top of this layer, and we're just going to evenly spread it. You want to make sure it's as even as possible. This way, when you slice the cake, everyone has an even amount of frosting in between the layers. Depending on how much buttercream you have, you can go a lot in the middle, you can go minimal, it depends. Everyone has their own preference. I always love more frosting. So what I'm doing here is I'm holding my angled spatula directly onto the frosting with light pressure, and the turntable is really doing all the work. I'm staying still and I'm just turning the turntable, and it kind of smooths the icing for me, just like that. Next, I'm going to put another layer and just press it down a little bit just to make sure we get any air bubbles out. The other tip I want to mention is that I'm actually working with frozen cake layers. So after I bake it, or if you purchase these cake layers, you want to put them in the freezer, even if it's just overnight, because that's going to make it a lot easier for you to handle the cake layers, and it's going to make it less crumbly. So when you're frosting the cake, you're going to have less crumbs come off the cake, and it just makes it a lot easier. So for this part of the layer, I'm going to add purple. You don't have to do this. You could do whatever color you want in the middle, but I just thought it would be fun to alternate between the colors. So this is how beautiful and rich and vibrant the purple is. And I'm just going to put a couple dollops down onto this layer and begin smoothing it out. And like I said, it may depend on the climate of where you are and the consistency of the buttercream. If it's a little bit too firm for you to work with, you can pop it in the microwave for 10 seconds. You can add some water to it to thin it down, or you can also put it in a bowl with your mixer and whip it up to get a fluffier texture. So I'm just smoothing out the buttercream. Like I said before, the turntable is really doing all the work for me. So I just have my spatula down and I'm just turning, and this is going to take time. It's kind of awkward when you're first starting to use a turntable. You just want to hover your spatula or your angled spatula over the cake on the icing and just begin to start turning. And your icing will smooth out nicely. Okay, so now I'm getting to my last layer. And what I like to do for my last layer is I like to flip it upside down so that the bottom, see, my cake has some frost on it because it was in the freezer, but I like to flip it. So this is the top, but I like to flip it so that the bottom becomes the top, because the bottom of the cake is always a nice straight and flat edge. And again, I like to just gently press down on top of the cake when I put my layer on, just to make sure that I get any air bubbles out. Just have to clean up my hands a little bit. Any questions so far or no? Okay. Okay, so the next step on this is I want to give this a little bit of a crumb coat before we add the stripes on the side. So since I used 2 different colors of buttercream, the bottom half, I'm going to just start with the black. And really, I'm just doing the thinnest coat of icing on the outside of this cake because I want to just lock in any of the crumbs. Locking in the crumbs, make sure that you don't have any crumbs on your outside layer so you get a nice clean finish. So I'm just going to use the most minimal amount of frosting. And I don't care if the colors get blended here when I do this, because we're going to be covering over it with our final layer of buttercream, so you won't be able to tell. So you can work with either color. And I'm just using my offset spatula to smooth a light amount of buttercream along the sides. We want to fill in the gaps between the layers and lock in those crumbs. And I'm just, like I said, I'm kind of mashing these colors together because you're not going to see this layer of frosting. When you do the crumb coat, it is important to try to get it as smooth as possible, since this is the base below your final layer of frosting. Okay, so I have all of the sides pretty much covered. I'm just gonna go over it really quick to scrape off any excess icing that doesn't need to be there. And at this point, I like to use another small bowl on the side, because you'll see here in my icing, hopefully you can see, there are some crumbs that came off, and I like to just keep this to the side so that when I do the final layer, you don't get crumbs in your icing as you dip back into it and on your final coating. So I'm just going to put a little bit of frosting on top of the cake to get that covered. Just a light coating. And again, it's okay if you see the crumbs in the icing on this layer, because it's doing its job, it's locking them in. Okay, so I'm just smoothing out the top. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to take the icing smoother, or I like to call it a bench scraper, so I might call it that interchangeably. And I'm just going to do with light pressure, I'm going to keep it holding perpendicular, or not perpendicular, up and down, up against the cake lightly. I'm not going to be I'm not going to be pressing it into the cake, and I'm not going to be like really scraping. I'm just going to leave it there. And again, the turntable is going to do the work. I'm just going to start lightly turning. And this is just going to take off any excess frosting and kind of smooth it out further. And again, since this is going to have some crumbs on it, I'm just going to wipe that off and put it in the bowl to the side. And you'll notice how when I scrape the sides, it pushes the frosting up to the top edge. And I like when that happens, because that allows me to get a sharp edge. And to get the sharp edge, I just hover over it with my offset spatula, and I drag it to the center. And when you do that, it kind of takes off any of the excess frosting that you don't need, as well as creating a sharp edge. So I'm just going around the edges to do that before we actually begin our official coat of frosting. Okay, so this is crumb coated, and we are ready to start the cool effect on the outside of this cake and do the stripes. So to do that, you are going to be using your piping bags, and you don't need a piping tip for this part, because we are just going to be evenly squeezing it along the edges of the cake to make stripes, and then we're going to use our smoother to kind of blend it all together. So I'm just going to take my piping bag. I'm not going to add any tip to it. I'm going to fill one piping bag with purple and one with black. And what I like to do is, if you don't have, sometimes people like to take a tall cup and place this on top and then wrap the extra of the bag down it so that you don't have to hold it and you can easily put the icing in. You can also just get your icing ready with the spatula and then put your hand inside of the piping bag and kind of form a cup with your hand. And then spoon the icing in. So we're filling one bag with purple and one bag with the black. Need more purple. Oops. Okay, so this is what my purple piping bag looks like. I'll put that to the side and we will fill the black. And when you're not using the buttercream, just make sure you put the cap back on so that the buttercream doesn't start to crust. Okay, so we'll put the purple to the side. And now we will fill the black. I love that we have a black buttercream because this color is very, very hard to achieve on your own. A lot of times you have to use like very dark cocoa powder to help as a base to get a black, but this is amazing that this is pre-colored. So now I have both piping bags filled. Black and purple. I'm gonna put the buttercream to the side. Bring the cake back. Okay, so it might be better to look at the view that's straight on because you'll see as I make the stripes along the edge of the cake. For the opening of the piping bag, I'm just going to cut straight across at the bottom. Again, we're just going to be making stripes, so we don't need any piping tip. So I cut up about like an inch up from the tip of the piping bag. Okay, so for this part, we're going to alternate the colors. We're going to create a stripe effect. Don't worry if your stripes don't come out perfect. It's still going to look really cool with these two colors together. So what you're going to do is you're going to just place we're going to begin the stripes, and I'm going to start with black, and I'm going to start squeezing and spinning my cake turntable. And we're just going to make our first stripe of black. And you want to kind of squeeze as evenly as possible along the whole way.
Pre-colored icing is still food color, correct?
What's the question?
Pre-colored icing is still food color.
Yes. So someone asked if pre-colored icing is still food color. Yes. It's just done for you so that you don't have to do the work. So next we are going to alternate the color and we're going to go in with the purple. So right above it, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start squeezing and spinning the turntable, and it's going to create a purple stripe. And you can make these as thick stripes as you want, thin. Really, it doesn't matter. So we're just going to continue doing this all the way along the edge of the cake. And right now it's kind of like it looks like we're just making tubes around the cake, but when we take our icing smoother and smooth out the edges, it's going to create stripes. There's other techniques to make stripes, but I feel like this is the one that uses the less amount of tools and it's kind of an abstract way to make them, but they do sell those icing scrapers that have the dents inside the edge, and it kind of creates an opening when you smooth to fill the gaps with another color to create a stripe. But this is another way to do it without having to have an extra tool. So now I'm going to go around with my purple. I'm just squeezing with the same amount of pressure as I go all the way around, right until it meets. This stripe effect is nice too, because it kind of looks like witch socks or witch stockings. And you could do this with any colors that you want. The Satin Ice Ready to Use Buttercream does also come in just a bright white, so you could always buy that and customize with the Satin Ice food color gels as well to get any color that you want. Okay, so now I'm getting to the top edge. So I'm just going to continue what I was doing. And then what I'm going to do is, I'm thinking we could continue the stripes on the top, but the top doesn't really matter because we're going to be filling it with the black cake drip. So whatever buttercream you want, we just want to make sure that the top is smooth. So I'm just going to add some frosting on top. I'll alternate the colors so it kind of looks cool. But like I said, we're not going to see this frosting anyway. We just want to make sure that it's smooth. Okay, so I have frosting alternating in colors along the sides, and that forms our stripes, and we're going to take the icing smoother and scrape the excess frosting off to create the stripes and very smooth. And then first, before I do that, I like to smooth out the top as best I can so that we can use that technique where we drag the colors over to create those sharp edges. Okay. Clean up the space a little bit. So like I said, first I like to smooth out the top. So I'm just going to smooth the top out a little bit. And then we'll begin the sides. And like I said, it doesn't matter what the color of the top of your cake looks like because it is going to be covered in black cake drip. But these two colors do look really cool swirled together. Okay, the top of my cake is nice and smooth now. So now is the satisfying part, but it's also scary because you want your stripes to come out perfect and you just never know what they're going to really come out like. So make sure your icing scraper is nice and clean. How many layers are the cake? Mine is 3 layers. I'm using 3 layers of vanilla cake. Mine are 7-inch layers. Like I said earlier, you can use whatever flavor cake you want. You can use whatever size. You could just do 2 layers if you want. I think with the drip, it looks really nice when the cake is a little bit taller, but if you only had 2 layers, it will still look just as pretty. So now we are going to begin the process where we're scraping the excess icing off the sides, and this is going to show the striped effect. So what I'm doing here, you don't want to dig the icing scraper into the side of the cake, and you don't want to like scrape off so much icing because then you're going to be left with seeing your crumb coat. You're going to just scrape off everything that you just did. So basically you want to just kind of hover over the frosting. Like you want to have the edge touch the icing and just start spinning your turntable. And it's like I said, the turntable does all the work for you until you can't go anymore, and then you'll slowly release. So as I do this, I'll show you what I do. So I'm going to start, and I'm just going to start spinning, and it's not going to be perfect at first. That's okay. And I'm going to just keep spinning until I feel like I can't turn my hand anymore. And when I get to that point, I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to slowly drag the spatula to kind of keep it a smooth finish off the cake. And this is really cool at the top. You see the alternating colors. Okay, so you can see that the stripes are starting to form. I'm going to go through with another pass, and then you might notice along your cake that there might be some gaps. And that's okay. They might close as you continue to smooth the cake, or you can go back in with your frosting and kind of just like do little dollops and then smooth around again to make it perfect. And each time you do this, you just want to make sure that your icing scraper is nice and clean. My favorite hack to do when I'm smoothing out a cake is actually stand by my sink and put the hot water on. If I'm using like a metal scraper, that wouldn't work if you're using plastic, but if I like to run the hot water, put this under the hot water, and it makes it soft. I mean, it makes it really hot. So then when you're scraping the icing, it kind of helps the icing kind of blend into each other, and it creates a really smooth edge. But I don't have that right now, so hopefully it still comes out smooth. Okay, so I'm going to try to remember. So I see here that I didn't really get to scrape much of this off. So I'm going to start here, and we're going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to pretty much touch my scraper to the icing, light pressure, and just start turning the turntable. And it's kind of just scraping off any excess frosting, but not so much that you're going to be left with a bare cake. And when I get to the point where I can't do it anymore, I stop spinning and I slowly kind of move the spatula off the cake so that I can leave with a smooth edge. Okay, so I'm seeing some areas where there's some gaps, so I'm going to show you how to fill those in. So I'm going to try to do this because I'm a lefty, but I might have to use my right hand. So down here, you might not see it, but there's like a little gap there. So I'm just going to put a little bit more frosting there. And I'm just going to fill in any other areas that I see. And you can make your judgment on which color that you should be adding more of. And like I said, if your stripes aren't perfect, it's okay because it's still going to be a cool effect. Okay, so I think I didn't have that many gaps. So I'm just going to pass through again. And I feel like you could just do this all day because you're going to look at your cake and just want to fix it and keep fixing it. But there gets to be a point where you just have to stop scraping the sides. So I'm just going to begin again. Slowly going around. And then slowly coming off. You can see here that you can see the stripe effect. And a lot of my gaps were filled in. I do see that there's still one more gap. And I'm going to see if me just smoothing over it one last time will help that. And the goal also when you're smoothing the cakes to get that smooth edge is to kind of get it so that the frosting is kind of raising up along the top edge of the cake. Because then we can do that technique where we smooth out the edges to be nice and sharp. So right here is where there's a gap. So I'm just going to try to smooth that out. I think it's looking pretty good. I want to do one more area and then I'm going to stop scraping. You can also do this cake without stripes. You could do it one color and decorate it with the ghosts that we're going to make soon. So that will look just as festive. I'm just going to do one last. It froze?
Oh, no.
Okay. I'm back. Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna stop scraping. And we are just going to smooth out the top and then we can begin the drip on top of the cake. Okay. So at this point, what I also like to do, any of the excess on the that's getting on the cake board, I put you have to be careful when you do this too, so that you don't dig into your cake, but you could also do this with a paper towel. But I like to put my offset spatula on the bottom of the cake board and like flush to the bottom and kind of just go over, and it picks up any of the extra frosting that's stuck to the cake board. And then you can go back with like a little damp paper towel to clean up extra. So now what I want to do is I want to get those sharp edges. So where the frosting is kind of going over the edge, what I like to do is just hover the spatula over it and drag that extra frosting toward the center of the cake. And when you do that, you're also going to just take off any of the excess. And when you do that, always make sure that your spatula is clean between each pass through. So you'll just go around the whole top of the cake and make sure the edges are nice and smooth. And again, it doesn't matter what the top of our cake looks like because it's going to be covered in the black cake drip. So we're just smoothing out the edges. And every time after, I'm working with a clean spatula. So I'm just dragging the edge to the center. And so now we're going to be ready to do the drip and decorate with the ghosts. So I'm just going to straighten up a little bit before we do that. Okay, so your extra buttercream you can put to the side. And we will begin microwaving the cake drip. Okay, so we are working with the black cake drip and the white cake drip. They both are flavored with like white chocolate. It's so delicious. And this is great because it's pre-made. All you have to do is pop it in the microwave for 30 to 60 seconds and you're ready to make drip cakes. You can drizzle on top of brownies, Rice Krispie treats. This doesn't dry hard like a candy melt. It dries softer. So you wouldn't want to do like chocolate covered strawberries that are dipped because it wouldn't dry. It wouldn't be super solid like a candy melt or chocolate chips. After you do this cake, you'll want to keep it in the fridge so that the ghosts don't melt down. But it's great because it melts down to a nice thin chocolate that is perfect for making drips. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the top cap off, remove the food safety seal, and then Pop it into the microwave with the cap off. I like to start first with 30 seconds. After the 30 seconds, you might find that it's perfectly liquid enough. But what I like to do is I kind of like just give the bottle a little squeeze, make sure everything is getting evenly melted. I put the cap back on. Always make sure that the top is twisted shut. I've made the mistake before by shaking it when it's not. It goes all over the place. So make sure the top is twisted shut. Give it a really good shake. Make sure that everything is evenly melted. And you can always like do one drip. And if you're thinking, it needs to be a little bit thinner, you can pop it back in the microwave for like 10 more seconds and give it another shake. But you'll probably be able to tell when you're shaking it, you'll feel that it's liquidy because it's moving up and down. So we are going to begin dripping now. I'll try to do it in the front so that you can see as I do it. But basically, it's super easy. You're just going to squeeze, and you'll squeeze longer for a longer drip and you'll squeeze shorter for a shorter drip. So the first one you do, you'll see the consistency and you'll start to know, okay, how much I should squeeze for each drip as you go along. So first we're just going to start along the edge, and then at the end we'll fill the center. So I'm just going to start squeezing, create a drip, stop squeezing, and it will move down the cake. I can't really see doing it that way. So as I do it, I will twist it to show you. But basically, you're just going to go around, and you can make your drips as close to one another as you want. So that's what it looks like so far. You can alternate. So sometimes I like to have like a short drip and then the next one be long. Like I said, the longer you squeeze, the longer the drip will be. Sometimes it looks cool even if it goes to the bottom of the cake. So some might do that too. And you're just doing this along the whole top edge of the cake. All the way until you reach the first drip that you did. So once you finish the drips along the side, you can just begin squeezing on top of the cake, kind of sporadically, because then we'll use the spatula to smooth it out. Careful that you don't put it too close to the edge because you don't want it to make the drips move down further or overflow the edge. Okay, so I have it all over the top, and now with a clean offset spatula, I'm going to smooth out the top. And when you get to the edges, you can kind of drag the edges in a little bit so that, like I said before, so that it doesn't overflow. And this does kind of start to set quickly. So you want to do this all in one sitting. You don't want to start it and then come back to it. And it's also setting really quick for me because I am working with a very cold cake because my layers were frozen. So mine is kind of instantly setting, which is crazy. I'm just going to add a little bit more. Okay. So now we have the cake frosted. We did the drip effect. And next we're going to make the ghosts that are going to go on top of this while this sets. And we will do some dollops on top of the cake with buttercream and then add the ghosts once they are set. Okay, so we're going to put the cake to the side. And we are going to take out our tray with our parchment paper. You don't even have to have a tray, you just need parchment paper and a flat surface. And we are going to microwave the white cake drip. So again, we're just going to take the food safety seal off and I'm going to pop it in the microwave for 30 seconds. After the 30 seconds in the microwave, you can start to kind of squeeze the bottle just to make sure everything is getting evenly melted. If it's not completely melted, you can kind of look inside, and if you see that it's definitely still thick, then you can just put it back in the microwave for like 15-second intervals. Okay, so then at this point, you can put the cap back on, give it a really good shake, because some parts of the bottle might heat quicker than others. I feel like mine has to go back in for another 10 seconds. Yeah, it's still too thick. When you do shake it though, it's going to end up going to the top, and to make sure that it doesn't overflow, just make sure you wipe that down. I'm going to put it in for another 10 seconds. Are there any questions? No questions?
How long will the cake drip last after using the
Um,
leftover?
A leftover cake drip. Let's see if we have that on. After opening. I mean, we don't have that on the actual packaging after opening, but it should stay, I would say, at least a week. You can leave it at room temperature. And then if you were to reuse it, what I like to tell people to do, what's awesome is that, so after you use this, the cake drip is going to kind of be in the cap here. So then it's gonna harden in there. So what you can do is you could take the cap off, and then this whole nozzle removes. And then you can run this under hot water and it cleans itself so that it doesn't get clogged. So when you use the cake drip again. Okay, so give it a really good shake. And now we're gonna make the ghosts. And these are super easy. All you're going to need is the white cake drip, the black cake drip from earlier, and an offset spatula and your parchment paper. So you're just going to squeeze some of the white cake drip out like a blob. And you're going to take your offset spatula, light pressure, kind of just like shape it. You're going to make like a little smear and you're going to shape it into a ghost shape. All of them are going to look unique. So you just squeeze, and you can make some that are bigger, some that are smaller. So you're just going to squeeze a dollop. And like I said, this is going to be set pretty quickly. If you want it to set faster, you can place it in your fridge and I'm sure it will set up within minutes. I don't have access to that right now, so that's why I did some earlier so that these are actually hardened or firm enough. This room is kind of warm, so hopefully I'm able to pick them up and put them on the cake. But to ensure that you're going to be able to do that, just put this in the fridge and you'll be able to take them off. And then at the end, you're going to want to store the cake until you eat it in the fridge as well so that the ghosts stay firm. So basically, after we make these, we're going to plop them on the cake all over, on top of the dollops on top of the cake, on the sides, wherever you like. Okay. So now that we made the ghost shape, you're going to take the black cake drip. Let me see if this is still soft enough. Yep, I give it a shake. I can still feel that it's liquid. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 little dollops for the eyes and then kind of like an oval shape for the mouth. And you'll notice that you're not going to have to really squeeze that much. You just want to squeeze a little bit, make a dollop for the eye, another dollop for the eye, and kind of just make an oval dollop for the mouth. And you'll just go from one to the next. And then we will let these set and then you can plop them on top of your cake. So I'm really not squeezing any out. As I'm tipping this, it's kind of just, I'm putting like the most light pressure because I don't want a lot of the cake drip to come out, just enough so that you can make 2 little eyes and a mouth. Okay. Okay, so my ghosts are made. I'm going to bring them up closer to the camera so you could see. And then you can put this in the fridge so that they solidify faster. I don't have that right now, so I'm just going to put them to the side. And we are going to,
I have a question.
yes, what's the question?
Will royal icing eyes stick into the cake drip to hold it in place?
Royal icing eyes will, yes, they will stick into the cake drip. You want to do it while the cake drip isn't set yet, though. Or you would want to use some of the wet royal icing to stick it to the cake. But that will definitely work. Okay, so now we're going to pipe some dollops on top of the cake. You could do it any color you want, black or purple. I'm going to do purple dollops. I have a star piping tip like this. And I have another disposable piping bag. And first, I like to put the piping tip into the bag. Press it all the way down to the bottom so that I know where to cut. You don't want to cut too much off so that when you're squeezing and you're squeezing the icing that the piping tip flops out of the bag. You want to just cut enough so that the tip goes out of the bag. So this is why I like to put it in first so that you can measure about where you want to cut. I'll do that. Push the piping tip back up, cut across. And squeeze the piping tip through. And I have some extra purple frosting from before, so I'm going to just squeeze some of that into this bag. And then Another idea too is you could probably use both of the colors, black and purple, and into the piping bag, and that would look really cool too. Okay, so along the top of the cake, I'm just going to do some purple dollops. So to ensure that I'm going to get an even amount, what I like to do is I like to start on one side, do a dollop, spin, and go directly across from it. Another one, then go to the other side. And always do them directly across from one another. And then fill in the gaps. When you end up needing more icing and you have to add it into your bag, you're probably going to experience an air bubble. So hopefully that doesn't mess up any of your dollops. Oh, there it was. Okay, so now we have the dollops all around the top of the cake. And now we can put the ghosts all along the sides of the cake and on top. Hopefully mine are set. Like I said, I don't have a fridge for mine. I did do some earlier, but this room is kind of warm, so I'm not sure if they're gonna let me pick them up. But at this point, yeah, mine are not hardening really. At this point, what you would do is after you take them out of the fridge, you would carefully lift them up off the parchment paper. I'll try to do it with one. Mine are too soft. Yeah, mine are too soft. I can't do it, but let me try. I'm gonna try something so that I can show you. Nope. Okay, so my ghosts are not hardened enough because I don't have a fridge, but what you would do is after you have them in the fridge and once they're solid, you would carefully take one off of the parchment paper and you can just place them on top of the dollops, on the sides of the cake, all around, and then your ghost cake would be complete. And like I said, you could do this cake with any colors you want. You could do it a solid color along the outside of the cake. You don't have to do stripes. Orange and black would be awesome. Just orange would be cool. So, and then you can also, you don't have to do ghosts. You could do witch hats. You could do pumpkins, anything festive for Halloween. Does anyone have any questions?
None right now.
Okay, so if you had any questions, let me know. Today we used the black ready-to-use buttercream and the purple ready-to-use buttercream along with the white and black cake drip. Those are all new products that are in your local Michaels shops on an end cap. So definitely go check those out. And yeah, so you can find this class on YouTube, on the Michaels YouTube, and if you want to review it more.
Sarah,
Yes.
another question. Are you going to be making a Thanksgiving cake or a holiday cake?
I'm going to probably be making a holiday cake, but the next class in November is utilizing the new isomelts, which is isomalt, but it's already, they're already tempered. So all you have to do is put them in the microwave and you'll be able to use them right away. So I'm really excited about that class, which is in November. So go sign up for that. Those are going to be Christmas tree cupcakes. And all you have to do is put the isomelts in the microwave and we can pour and make really fun shapes. So definitely join for that. And then I have to figure out what I'm going to do for the December class, but that will be a holiday creation as well. So definitely look to sign up for those. And thank you everyone for joining today's, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.